All right. Welcome everybody. We were just kind of chatting real quick. Me and Ree were chatting about something. And actually could you say again what issue you're running into?
Yeah, hey, hello everybody. Yeah, so the issue I ran into is the my site. Uh, it's the name of the existing Python modules.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I was talking to Michael Collins earlier today about he was running into a similar issue. And what happens if you were following the class last time, so if you did parts of it yesterday up to where you made the project, if you ran the command Django start project my site, you're going to have a my site directory in your home directory. So if you try to run that same command again, you'll get that error that you're getting. It just says it's just telling you that that already exists. So it shouldn't be, like that's not a broken moment really. That just says, okay, that step's already done. Move on to the next step. So you already have that file. If you want to like get rid of that file and start over, you can remove it with the rm-rf thing that we talked about earlier on. But that specific error just means that you already have the file or the directory that you're trying to make again. So you don't need to make it, if that makes sense. That
Hmm.
kind of clarify a little bit.
Yes, yes, yes.
Cool.
Just kept that. Yep, gotcha.
Excellent. Excellent. So then what we're going to do today is mostly hands-on stuff. So, some more folks trickling in. Welcome everybody that's just joining. We're just getting started. We are in our week 3 still. This is our regularly scheduled day. I know we had kind of an off day yesterday on Monday. We're still doing web development foundations. And today we're going to be connecting the little back-end stuff that we did. We're going to finish up the configuration with that. We're just talking about some of those steps. And we're going to connect it to our first little piece of the front end and make a homepage that's customized. So the next week we could roll through and start doing actual front end development and get a little more hands on making something look pretty and do some of the front end stuff for the next couple of sessions next week. So that's it. That's it for slides. I'm going to go actually by way of review. We're just going to talk a little bit about what we did yesterday, that catch up point, and I want to highlight specifically where we ended last time, where I made a terrible mistake and got us all stuck and broken and had to come up with some hacks to finish it. So we're going to go over to Python Anywhere. And to refresh everybody's memory where we should be, let's start in the console, actually. So I'm going to start in the console. And if we just do ls, we should see that we have our my site directory in here. We have our virtual environment directory in here. And again, if you partially followed and then try to redo it again, the issue to run into, if this already exists and you run the create or start project my site, you get a conflict that says you already have one. So in this, we have our site ready to go, and we should be, let me open up our web tab and another tab here. We should have our actual website with a rocket flying that says the install worked successfully and everything is cool. So this is where we stopped last time. We should have gotten to this point, and you should all see this rocket flying. One thing that I did though last time, and where I got stuck, and I ended up changing something in our settings file and coming up with a quick hack and making it just in plain text. I thought about that issue for a while, and I realized that something in here on the web tab of Python Anywhere was the mistake that I was making. This was actually the error. So this working directory down here, when I originally talked about this, I thought this was just a convenience. This was just a mistake on my part, not understanding what Python Anywhere was doing here. This working directory, I thought it was saying, hey, cool, you could go quickly to your working directory. So I said this was optional to change this. It is most definitely not optional. So I'm going to explain to you why, and I'm going to try to actually recreate the issue that we had. So I'm going to go in files, and if you remember, we were doing our my site, and we had settings. We were in the settings.py file. And we had imported this M environment package. We had taken the env class out of it, and we had hidden our secret key in this file, and we get this directory. Now, this is a standard way of doing it. It's usually in the top level, project is our root directory, is kind of where we are with everything. And then there's another my site directory. That's where our settings.py file is. That's where this file is right here. So it's the same directory right up here at the top. And that's where we put our .env file. And then it wasn't working. If you recall, we were getting this still in the error log, so we can open up the error log and have a look to see what the error was that it was showing us. So I'm gonna scroll down towards the bottom because it should be the most recent. Oh no, I had another error. So here's the error that we were getting yesterday. So it was saying Django core exception improperly configured, set the Django secret key variable. So I knew it wasn't getting this somehow. And I defaulted by the end of class to just putting this back into plain text. And then in email, I followed up and said, okay, but if you move this to just .env, then it works. That's terrible, though. That's not right. And the reason that it wasn't working like this, because this is the proper way to write it. If you have your settings file like this is correct. This is how you do it in Django. The reason it wasn't working was because I had failed to set this directory properly to my site. This working directory in Python Anywhere is the reference point for everything else. So back in our settings.py file on line 19, we're going to be using this today, this base dir today. And what it is doing here is it's using another package from Django, and it's assembling the like root directory for your entire project. So it has all these things, and it's taking the parent directories and it's doing all this stuff. And basically, if that's off, if that's wrong in some way, then all the other references and stuff that we do further is going to be wrong, because the main point that I'm really trying to hammer home with all of this is it's all files and directories. So if the directories aren't pointed in the right places, or if you point the directories and file names wrong somehow, you might end up breaking stuff. So that was the issue I was having yesterday. It was nowhere in the Python code. It was this setting right here. And so if you are following along, if you follow in the videos, the documentation was right that we sent out already. That was all the steps were right in there. It did say this was optional, so I just took that optional flag off of there and said that you have to set this. And if you're following along now, if you've run into problems and you've gotten stuck, just make sure that your code section of the Python Anywhere web tab has both your working directory and your source code directory is the same as home username my site. All right, everybody clear on that? Any questions? Anybody else have a problem still stuck there? Does that make sense? All right, cool. Great. So this is the point that we should have been. This is the point we should all be. If you're following along, if you follow along up to now, even if you weren't in class yesterday, if you had a chance to do the documentation or follow along with the video, we should have a successful installation. What we're going to do is follow the next steps and start building from here. So we're going to leave these tabs open because we're going to be bouncing around through a number of different files. I'll go ahead and close my log. But we're going to go through a number of things. I'll leave these open, but I'm going to go back over to my bash console, and we're going to start working in here. And this is where the majority of what we're going to do for right now is. So let's clear this up and get going. All right, so the first thing we always need to do is we need to activate our virtual environment. So we have to get in the habit of doing that every time we start. And if you recall, the command for that is source, and then the name of the virtual environment, and I'm using tab complete. Remember that too. There's no spell check in the console, but tab complete is very good. So you start typing a few letters of the thing you want, and then hit tab, and it should fill in the rest of it. So like this, I'm going to hit the letter B as in Bravo, hit tab, and it fills in bin for me. That's how I know that it's there and it's the way it should be. And then the last part of it is activate, again, using tab complete to make sure it's all there. So source, name of your virtual environment, bin activate, hit enter. We can see over here, we're in the virtual environment now.
Okay. Am I missing a trick here? Because I've got right now I got source venv slash B, and I'm trying to hit tab.
Yep.
And it's not filling it in.
There you go. That's why tab complete is good. That means you're probably in a different directory than your home directory. So you might already be down in your my site directory. And if you are, then you need to reference this path in a different way to wherever the path is to get to this.
Okay.
So like if you're down in my site, you might have to lead this with source ... VM. But these two dots mean to go back up a level in that level of directories. So that could be it. And if you can't figure it out, if you just hit CD with no arguments, it'll take you back to your home directory, and that's where your VM should be anyway. But this could be activated from anywhere. You just have to put in the path relative to this directory from where you are. Make sense?
Okay, so I'm trying to get back past the my site, right?
Simplest thing to do is just type in CD and hit enter, and you will go right back to your home. It's like the fastest way to get home, and then you know you're home. And then this command, the source vn bin activate, should work just fine. So we're gonna, there you go. All right, we're gonna press on. So we're actually gonna move right back into that my site thing. So again, you could have activated from there, but now that you've activated, so activate your source or your virtual environment, and then we're gonna change our working directory into the top level my site project directory. And then I'm going to show another cool command that we're going to use a couple of times here that is going to give us a much better view of what's in there than the list function, the ls that we've been doing. It's called tree, just like the word tree, T-R-E-E, all lowercase, space. And we could just hit tree and hit enter, and then it'll show us all the stuff that's in here. But I always put in this flag, the capital I flag for ignore, and I send it a pattern of things that I want it to ignore. So I open quotation marks, double underscore PyCache, double underscore, because we don't need to see that, and it's something that comes in standard in Python, and it's just a big waste. And then do a vertical bar. Oops, sorry. Vertical bar for or. And so this is going to do other things that I don't want to see. So I don't want to see any CSS. I don't want to see any images, and I don't want to see any JavaScript. So or CSS or IMG or JSS. All lowercase. Then I close the quotation marks. And this right here, so this is a set of filters that's telling this what to ignore. And when I hit enter on this, it's going to show me a cool little diagram of the directory I'm in is this dot here at the top. And it has the files and directories that are in here. So this is a file, the manage.py file. And then the my site that exists in there. And has all the files that are inside of that. And it's not showing our .env file because I have hidden files not showing. But I think if we put the A flag, I think it shows that. That's right. We know it's in there. We're not worried about it. So this is useful to kind of show the structure of things here, so we don't have to flip back over to the GUI. And we'll use this a couple of times today to show, as we add more directories and more files to understand sort of the structure of things and just have a look at what's where and see where it is. So this is a really handy trick. It's also in the documentation if you just want to copy and paste it out of there. But the tree command, very useful to see things. All right, so when we are in our top level working directory, we are in our virtual environment. The first thing we got to do to get going with the project, and this is, again, a very normal project step for any Django project, we have to set up what is called the admin panel. So let's go back over real quick to demonstrate what I'm talking about. And right here on our homepage now, we look at our base URL, what this exists at the top says https // hired labs di, so my username.pythonanywhere.com, and that's the whole thing. Now, if I put /admin at the end of this, it's going to take me, it should take me, well, it shouldn't have taken me there. I shouldn't have done that yet. So the idea is we're going to set up an admin panel to be able to go to and log into things. Let's get that set up first. That didn't look right. Let's do this again. So we're going to go back. We're going to run this command. We're going to set up our admin panel. It's a way for Django to be able to interact with things. And what I was showing at the top there was this is the directory that we have as our root, right? So this is the base that we're starting with. And what we're going to do is we're going to start adding different files like this admin here and paths and directories of URLs. URLs are universal resource locations. And they're just like the directories we've been doing with the file system in Linux. It's a location of a file, right? So we're going to set this one up, and it's going to be and then we're going to set up our own homepage and change this part. And the patterns we use here are going to be repeated over and over again. We're going to set up some of our static files as well. So the first thing we need to do is run a command to get our database set up. And the command for that is Python anywhere. I'm sorry, in Python anywhere in the thing. We're going to do Python 3. We're going to do manage.py, if you recall. So this is the same thing as when we did the main.py. It's the same idiom. Python 3, manage.py, and then the word migrate in lowercase, migrate. And what this is doing, this command migrate, is it's creating database tables. So when I hit migrate on this, it should run a big list of things. It says all migrations, admin, auth, content types, and sessions. These are names of database tables. So I don't get too deep into this. This is for, week after next when we do our own databases. But these are a set of databases that exist. And this is things for the admin user to be able to go and sign in and do some things with it. So now after we've run that, we can do things like creating users, creating an admin user, creating a super user. And that's the next step we need to do to be able to log into our admin page in the back and say, hey, cool, we can actually do things with it now. So let's do that. I'm going to clear this up so we don't need to see any of that. It just says everything worked. It says okay, a whole list of okays over there. That means we've set up our initial databases that come standard with Django. And we're going to do, again, Python 3. So the same idiom that we've done a bunch of times with the name of the file that we're running, and the name of this file in Django is manage.py. And if you recall, it has that if name entry point. So it's the same thing as when we're running the main thing. We're just using Django. And this command is going to be create super user, all one word, all lowercase. So we do Python 3, manage.py, create super user. And when I hit enter on this, it's going to take me through an interactive set of instructions in the command line to set this user's name, password, and all the kind of standard stuff you would expect for a user. There's some other required stuff like an email address. It's very straightforward, and you just follow the prompts to do what it do. So I'm going to hit enter on this. And it'll come up with, say, username, leave blank to use what we already have. It's up to you if you want to come up with something else. I'm going to set this to admin so I don't have to type in that whole Hired Labs DI thing. But it's up to you. You leave it blank. You could change the username, add a different username. Email address doesn't have to be a real one, but it has to follow the format of a real one. So it has to have the @ and something like this, look like a legit email address. But we're not going to use it for anything, so it doesn't have to be a real email address. Don't worry about that. And then we're going to enter a password. Now, this is confusing for people if you've never done this before. When you start typing here, and I'm going to start typing a password, you're not going to see anything. There's going to be no response at all from the console that you're doing anything at all. So you just have to know that you're typing the right keystrokes and know that it's working. Just trust that it's working, basically. There's going to be no input or feedback given to you. So you're going to enter your password, and when you hit enter, it's going to tell you to do it again and to make sure your passwords match. But it won't give you any feedback. So I'm going to type my password, but you're not going to see anything happening here. So I'm doing it right now. Type in my password. Oh, see, I made a mistake. I got to start over. Did you see that? You see the mistake I made? I'm joking. You can't see anything. All right, so there. I typed in my password once, and now I'm going to confirm it, hopefully. And there we go. So I wrote it twice, and you saw that there was nothing came up on the screen. So if you're writing your passwords, there will be nothing. It's a little bit off-putting at first. So you're writing your password in the blind. Do it again. And again, it doesn't have to be a super secure password. You could do something really basic. But then you did it right when it says super user created successfully. Now, this isn't going to be saved anywhere. So this isn't saved in your browser or anything like that until you use it the first time. And if you forget your password, there's not much of a way to recover if you can't get in the back. But you could just create another super user. You just come back in here, run this command again, make yourself another super user, and then you can go in and reset your passwords and stuff like that in the back end. But what this is going to allow us to do, so we go to this admin panel now. So now that we've run that, we have this. This looks really nasty, right? So this is what's here without doing some things to make it prettier, which we're going to do next. But what we could do now is we can log in here and have a look. So if we wanted to do admin and then the incredibly secure password that I came up with, don't look at my secret code. And now we can log in, but it looks gross. Like, this is terrible. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to make this look a little bit better by setting up what Django calls, well, not what Django calls, what everybody calls static files, but the way Django handles them is not amazing. But what this is showing you here is that we have successfully set up those default databases. We do have our users and we have groups. So again, this is hard to see, so I'm not going to go through all this stuff yet, but we have it. So we can log in, we can log out. I hit the logged out button. Now we're logged out. I can hit log in again and it works. So this is stuff that comes packaged in Django. It's basic stuff. Now I'll make this look prettier so we don't, I could actually show you around a little bit more. And the next step that we have to do anyway is setting up those static files. So any questions on this up to here? Anybody stuck? Not understand what we're doing? Have a question?
Yeah, I kind of see it.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is set up what's called static files. And in web development and web applications and all over the interwebs, static files are the kinds of things that are separate from your source code. So when we talk about all the stuff that we're writing in here, in this directory that lives here, this source code is the Django, the stuff that's written in Python, that lives on your server, and that's what we also call server-side code. Static files are things like JavaScript or CSS, which are the styles and the front-end things that make websites interesting, pretty looking, the colors, schemes, some parts of the layout, will be in your static files, as well as some backend script things like JavaScript could be in there. You could have Python scripts in your static files. So anything that might be complex computing that you want to do, if you want to run some algorithms that take some time. For example, we have machine learning algorithms hooked up in our website, and those are static files that don't live in these directories. They live in static files directories. So that's static files broadly. Django and every other backend framework has a way of dealing with static files. The way Django does it isn't particularly amazing. It's kind of clunky, because Python generally isn't known for internet and web development stuff, but Python, Django does work for it. And we're going to set those up now. All right. So let's do that. The first thing we're going to do is we have to make some changes to our settings.py file. So I kept this open from before when I was showing the mistake I was making. So if you go to your my site settings.py, we're making some changes in here. I talked a little bit already about base dir, this constant. It's in all caps. Remember, there are no real constants in Python. This is just telling humans that this is not going to change. Computer doesn't care. But it's using this package that it imported up here from Django that if you care to read, you can go look it up. But it's basically just constructing that directory for us to use. And so we're going to use that to point to a few things. But we're also going to need another package that is called OS. And it's a very, very common one to use. So we're just going to do import OS. That's short for operating system. And it allows us to interact with files, directories, things like that in the operating system. So we're going to use that as well to add things to our, to get our static files set up. So import OS up here at the top, the import statements, somewhere around line 12. Then we're going to scroll down a little bit and find another constant about row 60-ish, depending on how much you've spaced things above this, called templates. Now, templates are something we'll get to later today on when we build a web page. The template is sort of like the layout of that. And it goes and finds us where HTML is going to live. So to get that to work, though, we have to add in this templates, there's a list, and then inside of it, there's a dictionary. So we have key value pairs, right? This first one is the key is backend. The second key value pair, capital DIRS, short for directories, has an empty list. So inside that list, we need to add something. So we need to add a reference to the base dir from up here from line 19. It's the same thing. So base dir, and then we're going to do slash, and then the string, lowercase, sorry, templates. And that's it. So we do base dir, reference to that thing up top, a slash, and then the string templates. And what this is doing is telling it to create, expect our templates to live in a directory called templates. That's all this is doing. So it's saying that's where those templates are going to be. Look for them there. All right, so we're going to scroll down a little bit more, continue configuring this for our static files. We scroll basically entirely all the way down, right? So very, very, very bottom, down towards row 120 somewhere, 125-ish. We have this thing called static URL already set to static. And what this is telling us is that in our actual website, in the web page, up here in the URL, it's going to say static, and that's where our static files are. I mean, we're not really going to navigate there, but that's how the browser is going to know where these things live. So that's what that is. It comes standard. We can leave that where it is and leave it alone. So we're going to go a couple of rows down here and add some more variables, or constants rather, because they're going to be capitalized, to direct some other things in Django to be able to collect our static files and static files that we make. So this is going to be our images, any pictures we want to put up there, videos, JavaScript, Python scripts, any of those sorts of things. This is where these are going to be. We have to put two different references in here. The first one is going to be static _root. And this is going to be a place where all of our static files from every app that we make and everything that we do in different static files around our project is going to be collected into one specific spot. So when I ran collect static before, and I didn't run collect static before. We're going to run that in a second. When we run this command called collect static, it's going to pull everything into this one directory. So we have to tell which directory to do that in. And we're going to use that OS package that we had before. So we're going to do .path.join, open parentheses. We'll use that base dir again, because we're adding things to that base directory. And this time it's two arguments. The first argument is that base dir, and we do comma. And the second argument is going to be a string naming the directory that we want to use. So it's going to be something that we can identify as the main static directory. I typically use like static main. You can follow it with a trailing slash to show that it's a directory if you like. And then we'll close that off. And so this is our static root. So this is where this directory doesn't exist. But when we run that command I told you about, collect static, it's going to create this if it doesn't exist. So you don't have to worry about making it. It'll create it if it's not there. Now, the next one that we have to put in is called static files underscore dirs, static files directories. And this is going to be a tuple. So it comes in parentheses, in parentheses. So the open parentheses, and we're going to give it two things. So the first one is going to be os.path.join, just like we did the same thing up here. And again, we're going to give it the base directory from above. And this time we're going to give it a name that can, static is the typical one. The idea being that we're going to make, when we make our application, we make our to-do list application, it can have its own static files within that application. And so it'll be like to do as the top level thing and then static underneath it. And then if we make another application, say a user login application or, calendar application or something like that, those applications have their own static directories inside of it. And we're telling this right now, we're telling Django that those directories will always be called static. So that every time we make an app and we run collect static, it'll go to those directories and it'll look for a static directory and it'll take all the static files out of it and put it up here into this main static root one. That's what we're telling this thing to do right now. So I know this is somewhat confusing the first time you do this, and it's not very clear on a lot of times why we set up these three variables. And I want to make sure that we understand why we did this. So I'm going to hit save. Anybody have any questions about what we did with these settings?
Yeah, line 127.
Yep.
You have a comma between the two closing parens. Why is that?
This right here?
Yeah.
Yep, because this outer thing is tuple and expects two things. Well, it doesn't really expect it. So a lot of times in lists or tuples, things like that, you could put this trailing comma and it doesn't break anything. And it's a good habit to do. There may be some specific reason that this expects there to be two things and the next thing is just empty, but this is just like the idiom that goes in here. So get in the habit of putting kind of trailing commas. You'll see it in a lot of lists, like here. See this list here? Yeah. There's nothing after this item, which is a, set or no dictionary, looks like it's key value pair, but it ends with a trailing comma. So that's a real common thing to do in Python all over the place. In case you want to add more things to it, it's there so you don't forget. So that's what I imagine this is as well.
Okay.
Good question, though. Anything else about these, how they work, why we set them, why we gave them the names we gave them?
One thing I've always found crazy about Python is that you have to do these imports in so many places that it's the same import. You would think that if it's a project and you've got a file, you do your import in one spot and everything in your project is going to benefit from this, but
it does kind of. You just have to put it in the right place. Yeah, you just got to make sure that you're referencing in the right places. And every file has to be aware of where it is. So I get what you're saying. Yeah, you do have to be pretty explicit with it.
Yeah, like a Ruby, you have a gem file and you put it there, and if it's there, it's there, and everybody can use it.
Yeah,
and
each language is going to approach this whole thing differently.
Yeah, it's just got to be so explicit. Sure. But if you didn't add the OS, this file can't see that OS was added on another file. Yeah, it can't tell. So it just seems so repetitive.
It is. There's a lot of repetitive stuff. So, and the main thing I really want to highlight here as well is that these two things, the static root, static files, dirs, cannot be called the same thing, right? So the static URL can match either of these. That's okay. But it will break if you try to match these two as the same name. They have to be different names. So, there's no strict rule. It has to be static and static main, but they can't match each other. All right. So we've done that. We've we've set up our static files. Now we need to go and do the command collect static, which is going to now go to these places, collect all these things. And also on this part, there's a bunch of static files that come standard with Django that's going to kind of download from someplace else that are not on my local computer or in my place anywhere. And it's going to download those and pull those in as well. So following the same idiom that we have in the other times, we're going to do Python, except we're going to spell Python properly. Python 3 manage.py. I'm going to use tab complete to make sure I know I'm in the right directory, and I do have my manage.py file there. And then I'm going to call collect static, all one word, all lowercase. I want to hit enter on this if I've configured everything right, which hopefully I have. It will give me this little warning that says, hey, this doesn't exist, which it doesn't. We haven't made a file or a directory called static at the top level. There are no directories called static yet, so that's okay. And then it'll tell me how many static files it copied and to where it copied them. So it'll give me this full directory. It did make this static main directory for us that didn't exist before. To prove that it did, we just hit ls, and there we see it right there, static main. And actually, let's use our much cooler, much prettier. I'm just hitting the up arrow to get back into my history, so I don't have to retype this whole thing. But I'm going to use the tree command and have a look at what we've got now. So now we can see we have our static main directory in there, and it has an admin directory inside of it. So these are all the files. And if we didn't ignore all the CSS and image and JSF stuff, there'd be a whole bunch more on this underneath that. We don't need to see all those details. But that's what's inside of this directory. This is another directory. It has the CSS, so which is the cascading style sheet we'll talk about next week. That's got colors and some animations and stuff like that. So now that we've done that, we collected static. We have all those things in there. Let's refresh our web, our source code on our browser, or not a browser, sorry, on the server. So we reload on the server. When that's done reloading, we will go over to our browser and refresh the browser, because it'll pull the information from our server. It'll pull the latest information that we've just pushed up there and reloaded. Well, this thing's taking a sweet time to reload right now. Oh, wait. Before we do that, I skipped a step. See? This is why I got to follow my own documentation. So we can let that hang for a second, and it'll just finish when it finishes. But we needed to add our static files directory here as well on this page. So I forgot that step. Let's do that step now. And this can finish reloading or not. I'm just going to refresh this page entirely, and it'll stop doing that because we'll just reload in a minute. Let's scroll down and skip and get this step that I skipped, and we cannot skip because it won't work. So down here where it says static files, we have to once again tell this thing, our Python Anywhere instance, which directories to look for our files. And that's the step that I skipped up here yet last time, and it broke everything. So let's not skip it this time. So we have a couple of settings we need to put in. We have to put in our URL and our directories. The URL is going to be the thing that we've already seen. So this has an example. It says, example /static/. We're just going to use that because it's really standard, easy to remember. So use /static/, and we'll hit the little check mark to save it. And now another one will pop up. So if you want to add more of the URLs, you can. But in this one next to the one we just entered, where it says enter path, we're going to click on that. And the path is going to be the same pattern that we've had up here, where it's the /home/username/ and then we'll do static main, if that's the convention that you followed. If you named it the same thing that I did in your static root. So this is basically the static root, whatever you set it to, you want to match that. So this is the static root that you set in your settings.py. So we see we have static main here. It's our static root. That setting needs to be in our directory here, right? Wait, is that right? No, it could be I'm sorry, it's my site static. What am I talking about? It's in the project. My site / static main, right? Because we are in this top directory right here. This dot is my site. That's where we are right now. And static main is inside of that, right? So our full path is /home/username/mysite/static main. So that's our directory to our static files. This is the static URL that we want to use. And now we should be good to go. Now we should be all set up. Enable the HTTPS because I like doing that. You don't have to. All right, now when we reload, hopefully this doesn't take as long as it did before, but it might. And when we reload this time, it should be catching those directories that we set it to. And it didn't take as long because now it had the directories it needed. So that was probably why it was taking so long the first time. And I go here and refresh the browser side, and it looks a lot prettier. So now we have our admin panel that looks much, much better. So I'm gonna log back in, and let's kind of see what we got. All right. So this is, again, the standard admin panel that comes built into Django. And this is why we call it a backend framework. This is what comes in standard. These things like users that we set up our super user. Pretty much everybody's going to need that. We're going to need some sort of administrative users to get this. So this backend piece right here is not something you would typically give access to everybody to, but site administrators could come in here and do whatever they would need to do, site administration. So we click on that users thing. This is just a list of over on the left-hand side, is just a list of basically the database tables that you have. So we have a user table, we have a groups table. Those are the ones that, again, came standard. As you can see, this is the user that I made. So we could do a lot of the functions that we're going to do. And here, I can zoom in on this a little bit so it's easier for folks to see. But the functions that we're going to be building into our web app are the create, read, update, and delete functions, the 4 things. We'll talk more about those as we go. It's pretty much all you could do with any application. You could do all those here. So we can add new users here. Up here, this add user button. We can, filter and look at them in different ways. We can click on this guy and adjust it, add first name, last name, change the email address, change the password here. Again, remember I said if you forget your password, you could just create another super user, come in here and change your password. Do staff status, add them groups, set permissions, all that stuff just comes built in and it's ready to rock in Django. So what we're going to be doing when we make our application is we're going to be creating our own databases, and they're just going to be Python classes. And we're going to do very similar mechanics to this, but we'll be able to see them in here and interact with them in here as administrators once we make them and write them as developers. So any questions about that before we press on and start making our first application and routing our homepage? Any questions about static files? All right. Like always, you got questions along the way. Raise your hand, take yourself off of mute, do whatever you got to do. Get my attention. We're gonna move on to starting our first application. It's the only application we're gonna make. It's a web application. It's the to-do application we've talked about so much. Let's actually get this thing rolling. So one other thing I want to say real quick in the admin panel is really standard. Is this little view site button up here at the top. It'll take us back to our homepage. So we're going to set this up through our application to be some sort of custom homepage as well when we get to that point. But the first thing we need to do is back in our console, we're going to create our application. We'll run some more commands in here and get the application up and running. So here's our current file structure up here at the top. We will clear this out of the way, and we'll have another look as we go. All right, now the first command we're going to run, same idiom that we've done a couple of times, is Python 3. We're going to be using the manage.py again. So we're in that same top level working directory where our manage.py file is, using tab complete to make sure that we are there. And we're going to enter the command start app, all one word, lowercase. So Python 3 space manage.py space start app, all lowercase. And then we're going to give our app a name. So any name you like. I'm going to call it to do, which may not be the best broadly name, but I suggest we follow the same naming conventions for ease of moving forward. If you call this something else and then something breaks down the line, it might be harder to debug, but it is your choice. This could be anything you like. We're going to call it to do. When I hit enter on this, it's going to quickly do something and not give me a whole lot of feedback, but it's going to be control back on our console. So I'm just going to hit up arrow until I get to this tree command again and have a look at what our file structure, our folder structure looks like. And as you can see under the static main, we've now added a new directory called to do. And it has an init.py and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
How do you get to the directory again? The tree?
So you just type in this command, tree. If you've typed it in once, you can hit the up arrows and it goes back through your history.
Oh,
and it'll just...
Okay. I've not done it before.
Yeah. So any command you've typed in, you could hit the up arrow and hit and get it out of your command history. But if you haven't typed this in before, it won't be there. So you have to type in tree.
Type it in.
Yeah. Type it in once, and then you should be able to reference it by hitting the up arrow. So as we can see that we have our This is the database that comes with it. Since we migrate our database, this is the database.sql Lite 3 comes standard with Django. It's good for development, not so much for production. So you want to move it to something else, but it's great for development. So you don't have to do anything with that. We're not going to do anything with it in this course. We're going to leave that how it is. But we also added our to-do directory that has a set of files in it that we're going to be doing a lot of things with. The init.py that just makes it a Python module. Worth reading up on at some point on what that is. It's a standard thing in Python. We're not going to dive deep into it. There's nothing in it that we're going to mess with in this class. Same thing with admin.py. We'll do that when we start setting up our models. Apps.py, that's kind of an interesting file. We might look inside that one real quick because we do have to do one other thing with it actually here in a second. So we should look at that. But we're going to spend a lot of time in views and our URLs up here in the top level. We're also going to make another URLs file in our to-do thing and routing URLs. Basically, the pattern that we're going to follow a lot is we'll write a view because the views are going to be Python functions at first. We're going to write functional views. And then later in the class, we might refactor them into classes if we have time because class views are pretty cool. But we'll write functional views at first. So we'll write a view, and then we're going to route it in our URLs some way. So tell that view what URL to use. And then we're going to make a template. Remember, we talked about templates. There's no template directory yet, but we set it in our settings file. We'll tell in this views file which template to use. And this is how we do all the routing of URLs, all the routing of web pages. We're going to start doing that today, but this is where it's going to be. So kind of brief orientation of where things are up to now in our file structure. So let's actually, let's have a quick look at this apps.py that we want to look at. I'm going to do it over in our files again, just because it's a little easier. So if I go back to our top level, we got the my site top level project directory. Here's our to-do directory that we just made. I'm going to go down in there and we see all those files that we had. I'm going to open up our apps.py. And in here, we're importing some stuff from Django. We're not going to make any changes to this. I just want to show you what's in here. So there's just a class called to-do-config. And it has some stuff in there. It's got a name, it's got default fields. Like there's nothing in here we're going to do. But we need to let the big project know, the top level project know that this app exists in here. So we need to somehow route it through our thing that says where it is. And the setting that we need to put this in is in settings.py again. So we're going to go back to our top level thing. And I just wanted to show you that class definition. It's not anything we're going to mess with or do anything with directly. So I'm back in the my site settings.py. And I'm going to add, now that we've created that app down on for me, it's row 38, somewhere in the vicinity, somewhere around 30-ish. It'll be below your allowed hosts. You are going to add to this list of installed apps, you are going to add the name of the app that you made. So for me, it's to-do .apps, and that's that apps file we were just looking at. So it's referencing that file. And then we're going to reference that class. To-do, capital, config, one word, but also capitalized. So capital T, capital C. So it's the name of your app capitalized as the first part of the class name, and then config as the second part of the class name. And that's all standard. Every time you start an app in Django, that's the naming convention is going to be, and you have to add it to installed apps to make it run properly and make it aware, make the project aware that this app is now part of the project. All right, so I'm going to save this. And now that we've done that, that should be the last setting that we have to change in here for now, and we can go start writing our views and start doing the thing that I was telling you about we write our view and we route through a URL, and then we point to a template. So that's a pattern we start following. Let's start following now. So back into our to-do directory, we're going to open up our views.py. We're going to write our first view. So we come in here, the very top part, it says that we are importing render. And then we're going to use this package soon to actually put up render on the screen in the browser, some sort of template. So our function is going to have to direct this thing to do what we want it to do using render. In HTTP interactions, you have a server and you have a client. The client is us on our web browser interacting with servers where the code is. Clients send what's called a request to a server. And a server sends a response back. So anytime you're writing these views, You're going to be dealing with requests coming in as input, and you're going to be dealing with responses going out as output. It's typically the structure that you're going to be dealing with. So let's write our first functional view. We'll start the same way we did any other Python function, def, to define the function. And then as sort of an internet standard, the home page is often called index. So I'm going to call this function index to know that this is referencing our what's going to be a custom home page. And it's going to take in a request. So remember I said the requests are sent to servers, and then the responses are come back. So this is going to return a rendering. We use that render package. So render, open parentheses, and it's going to take in the request because that information is going to have like headers and a whole bunch of stuff in there that we're not going to get into, but it's laid out in HTTP. The protocol says exactly what should be in the request, what a well-formed request should be, and render expects that request to exist. And then we're going to give it a name of a template to go and find. So it's going to expect the request because it's going to do some stuff with that. And we have to give it a template name. So this is going to be index.html, which is short for hypertext markup language, which we'll talk about more shortly. We'll actually use a little bit of it today, but we'll talk much more about it next week. And is a front-end unavoidable thing on the web. But it basically says layout of the page. So we're going to write some of that in our template here. This right here is a fully formed view in Django. So as you can see, it's the same thing as a Python function. It has a return statement, and this is what it returns. It points to, it takes the request, points to this template. We'll save that, should get rid of our error, because that error was just telling us that we're importing this package but not using it. Now we're using it, so we're good. So we have no errors, we're solid. All right. Now, the next step, we've written a view. The next thing we need to do is we need to route our URLs. So we are going to need to, there's a couple of ways we could do this. So we go to our top level project file, so up to the full my site level. And if we go into the my site, so we're 2 levels in, same place where our settings.py is, there's a urls.py directory in there, right? I'm going to open this up and have a look. So this already exists. This is the top level project one. And we're going to make some changes to this. We're going to do some things to it. But a best practice for when projects start getting bigger and things like that is to have each application that you have has their own set of URLs they're going to have. So we could just add those patterns here and concatenate this list or add them into this list here. That tends to get really long. So what frequently is done is we add another urls.py file in the to-do application. And then we're just going to connect it into this so that we do less updating here on the top level. And we add more URLs as applications grow. They'll have several URLs in the application. And we'll add more of those into that list. So we're going to set that up now by making a new URLs file and then adding very similar things of this into it to route that view that we just made. All right. So let's do it. What we're going to do is we're going to create, I'll do it in the GUI. We're going to create a new file. So we're going to go to our to-do directory. So it's my site to-do, and we're in the same place that we've got the admin, apps, models, tests, and views.py and the init.py. And so in this files bar, we're just going to make a urls.py file. So urls.py, hit new file, and it's going to go totally blank, totally blank file. In this, we're going to import a package that is called path from django.urls, which is a very useful package. It has a bunch of stuff in there that helps route URLs. And then we're also going to import from the top level, so from the place where we are. So this to-do directory, that's what this dot means. It means the same directory that our urls.py file is in. That's what this dot is referencing. So it's going to say this to-do directory. So my site to-do is what this dot is representing. So from this directory that we are in, import the views. And we don't have to do .py. It's going to take our views.py file and it's going to import the views. And so now we have access to those here in our URLs, in our to-do URLs file. And we can add them to our URL patterns. This is expected. This is like a reserved thing in Django. It expects it to be URL patterns. Don't call it something else. Don't get creative. It's the same as what's in the top level one. And we are going to make a list in here that is going to contain the URLs that we want to route. URL patterns. Inside, we're going to write our first URL route to the view that we just wrote, the index view. The way we do this is we use the path thing that we just imported. So we write path, open parentheses, and it's going to expect some sort of URL designation. You could put in any string you want here, but keep in mind it's going to be the name that you see up here, right? So if you wanted this to be like, say, user, you would type in user here in the string. When we do an empty string, this means that it's just the base URL. So it's just whatever your base URL is. In our case, it's going to be home, username.pythonanywhere.com. That's what this is telling it. So when we name our URL paths, it's going to be a string first, then comma, and then we're going to say which view we want to use. So views.index is the name of the view that we wrote. And I don't have to go look because we're using standard naming conventions. That's why we use standard naming conventions. I don't have to remember, what do I call that thing? This is the index. It's called index. And I'm also going to give it a name keyword argument of, again, following the naming convention, index. So I know what to expect. I'm going to close the parentheses. And then, Michael, good, point out trailing comma. Because this is a list. We're going to add more paths to this. We're going to add more URLs. So we're going to put that in there to make sure that we have space to do that and it doesn't break. All right, so the next thing we got to do is we're going to go up to our top level my site URLs and connect this file to that file so that all we got to do is add things here and it'll be included in the top level. And we're going to add what's called, got to save. So we're going to tell the project to include all the URLs from this application. And we do that for each application that we add. That way we only have to do this once for each application on the top level. And then every time we add paths down here, we're just doing it in each application. We don't have to worry about the top level anymore. So let's go set that up. So we go my site, again, my site, down the same place as the settings.py. We're going to urls.py. So we're at the my site.urls or /urls.py. And this also has a bunch of like documentation here in this string at the top. It tells you different patterns, different ways of doing it, functional views, class-based views. We'll go through some of this. The very last thing in here says include another URL conf. This is what we're going to do right now. So we say import the include function. It tells you how to do it. So again, if you're trying to take notes at home, this is already written in there. You don't even have to do anything. It's right here. So this is from Django.urls import include and path. So it's already including path down here. So we just have to quite literally add comma include on this row 18. And it'll match this pattern up here. And then it says the same thing. So it's as URL patterns like this. So it says path, and then the name of the thing, and then it says include the name of the thing. So I'm just going to copy this example, and I'm going to change the name of the things to be what I want it to be, right? So I'm going to copy and paste that they have the example here. So it says path, open parentheses. This says blog. I'm not writing a blog, so I'm going to take that out, just have the empty one. And right here where it says blog again, I'm just going to replace that with my app name, which is to do. And there we go. So now we've routed it, and remember the comma afterwards. Don't forget the comma because it's a list. It will break. So we did path, open parentheses, empty string, comma, include, to do URLs. And again, now we could name this. We're doing this right now as blank because we have our home URL, our index URL routed through to-dos, but we could put that up here at the top level too. We could put this as to do or something like that if we really wanted it to be, but we're just going to leave this as the home one now. So I'm going to save that. And now the last thing that we need to do, we've written our view. We've written our URL routing. So the last step we need to do is make our template. And this is the pattern that we're going to follow every time we make a page. So you write a view, you route the URL, and then you connect it to a template, or you make a new template if a template doesn't exist. Since we haven't made any templates, we know it doesn't exist. We're going to have to go make one. But that is the pattern that I really want to make sure that we understand. All right, so back in our console, we're going to do a little bit of making some directories, making some files here. So I'm going to do the good old make directory command, mkdir, all lowercase, and I'm going to make a templates directory. Now, again, remember I'm in the top level my site project folder, so at that level, I'm going to make a templates directory. And then I'm also in that directory, I'm going to make an index.html file. So I'm going to do touch, or we can just go over and open it in the other one, but I'm going to do touch since I'm here. So I'm going to do templates, and then index.html. And this will create our file. And let's just go back in here. And here's our templates directory that we just made. And I'll open up in the GUI because it's just easier to mess around with, and I don't want people stuck in V. But let's go into our index.html and start writing some HTML. So this is our template that we've routed, we've set it up, and Python is expecting it, and it'll come and find it. We're going to go deeper into HTML next week, but let's use some real bare bones, very simple parts of it now to get going, and we'll start kind of developing further on that. So to get started in an HTML document, HTML5 is one of the most recent versions, and it has this thing at the top that you type. Well, first of all HTML has these what's called tags. And so it's going to be an opening part of it, which is going to be like a less than symbol, and a closing part of it is going to be like a greater than symbol. And all the information is go in between this is called a tag. So the first tag starts off with an exclamation point, and then all caps word doc type space lowercase HTML. And this is something, then closing. And so this beginning tag is something that HTML5 likes to have in there. So include that at the top of the page. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes in very standard. So we're going to do a really bare bones HTML documents. The first tag is just an HTML tag. Inside of it, you could do different things. We're going to get deep into this, but you could set attributes like tell it what language to expect. You know, this could be in English. And since we're doing this in this text editor, when I close the tag, or when I close this opening tag is what it's called, it automatically filled in what's called the closing tag. So the opening tag is just HTML. And then if you have any attributes inside of it, you can, but they don't have to be. And here's the greater than symbol. The closing tag has this slash in it. It has this forward slash before the name of the tag. So in between these tags is where the content is going to go for our HTML page. So this is basically what you think of as our page, the whole thing, the whole page. So in between it is the stuff that we're going to put in there. Right now, lots of parts. There's a whole world of things in HTML. Again, next week is when we're going to get more deeply into this. But for right now, we're just going to set up two basic parts. They're really common, two elements called a head. And inside of the head, it's going to have our title. The title, I'm just going to put plain text my site in between it. So I opened a tag, I started writing title, and then when I put in the greater than symbol, it gave me the closing tag automatically. In between those two tags, I wrote plain text my site. And what this is going to do is you see up here in the top of all these URL tabs where it says like index.html and it says where I am, or if I open a new tab, it says new tab up here at the top, right? That is what I'm setting with my site. So this head tag, the title in the head tag is that thing that's up here at the top that says whatever it says. This says new tab over here on this tab or whatever. So that's what that is. Now, the information that's on the body of a page goes into, appropriately, a body tag. So I'm going to add that tag. So these are the two tags that I want to make sure we have in our really basic HTML thing, our head tag and our body tag. The body tag could have regular text in it, it could have all kinds of stuff. I'm going to put in what's called an H1 or a heading element. So this is like a top level heading element. So just big. And I'm just going to put a string in here. So I'm going to say this is the index, just to label this as our index. And that's it. So this is all I'm going to put in for the HTML. This is exceptionally basic. We're going to get much more into this later, but it's just so we have something to look at to move forward. All right, so now that we've done this, it should work to the point where we save it. If we refresh from here, this little two arrows like a recycle button, this is going to reload on our server the changes that we've made. So we just do that directly here. We don't have to go all the way back to our web tab. And I want to go back to the rocket launching place. When I hit refresh, it should change this into our index.html. And it does. So now we have our custom index set up at our root URL, which is just the username.pythonanywhere.com. And this is the information that I wrote into our index template that we routed through the view, put it to the URL, and we pointed this template. All right. Now we have a web app. Course is over. Everybody go home. No. Any questions there? We're going to stop there for a second. We're going to do some refactoring and hook up some more kind of Django-y ways of doing this. But I want to take a pause there and see if anybody's got any questions on how we did this, what we did up to this point, or where we are.
Do you have documentation for this that you can send out?
Yeah, I sent it out earlier. So you should have in email the day 6 documentation, I think was the name of that email that I sent out earlier. And it's linked in
Okay,
there.
I'll look. look
And
for
I'll send it along with the video for today too. It's got all these steps, so you should be able to mostly just like kind of copy and paste and things like that to get it done.
That's what I'm
And
looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, it should work up to this point. And it shouldn't take too long when you're doing it that way as well. But yeah, so I already emailed that out, and I'll send it out with the recording from this one. If you didn't catch that one, and I'll put it up in Discord as well.
Could you also include the fix for the virtual environment thing?
The virtual environment.
Unless I did something wrong, or what you were covering earlier, something had broke.
Oh yeah. When I was talking about the yesterday's thing where I forgot to set this setting right here.
Yes.
Yeah, so it just really just remember to set these two as the same thing.
Okay.
And then if you follow day 5 documentation, it has all those steps and it tells you to do that. I just failed to do it in class.
Got it.
So there's no special anything to, like, the documentation is solid. It has all those steps in there. Just don't treat this as optional like I was doing mistakenly yesterday.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else before we go to the Django-y refactoring of this? All right. Cool. So this is basic HTML here. And what we're going to do is we're going to implement something from Django called Django's template language. There's just technically some other markup language thing. It's kind of goofy looking, and it's got extra stuff that you could forget, and it breaks pretty easily. So, welcome to a world of annoyance. But it does allow you to do some cool stuff where we can set up what's called a base template, where all the things that don't change from a website, like I say, a banner at the top, then top bar, navigation bars, things like that stay consistent throughout each page. We could put those into the base template, and then we can have other page templates with just the different stuff written, so we don't have to write the same things like a nav bar 12 times if we have 12 pages or something like that. We add nav bar once, and then we sort of inject the content that we want from each specific page in that, and the nav bar stays in one base template. So we're going to set that up to where we have a base template and this index that we have. So we're going to have a base.html and an index.html. So the first thing we got to do is we got to make that base.html, and it's going to be in our same directory that we're in, our templates directory right here. So I'm just going to open this up in a new tab and make it here in the GUI so we're not hopping back in to other place. All right, so we're in our my site templates directory. Here's our index.html. Right next to that, we're going to make base.html. This is also an HTML file. It's treated like a template. And we're saying hit new, and it's going to take us right to the text editor. Now, what we're going to do is pretty much put everything in this that was in the index, except like this piece of content that says it's the index. Pretty much everything else that's here. So I'm just going to copy all this, even the H1 element. I'm going to go over to base, and I'm just going to paste it in here. I'm just going to take out this one, right? So pretty much this entire thing, except that one specific part that says this is the index, that's what we need to have in our base.html. Now, the Django part. This is the Django front end, or Django template language, as they call it. So you open a tag with a curly bracket and then a % sign, and you close the tags with a % sign and a curly bracket. So all Django tags have these things in there. It's kind of a pain. They're easy to forget. What we're going to put in here is called a block tag. This is a reserved word, the word block. And what it's going to do is we're going to name it whatever we want to. So this next part is a variable name. We can put anything we want to in here. I'm going to use the word content to keep us reminded that this is the page content that we're going to have. But this could be anything. This word content could be anything. I'm using that for this demonstration. We're going to use it throughout just so we know what it's called. That could be anything. So block is a reserved word. Content is not. And these also have
these are curly braces, right?
Curly braces, yes. Curly braces. So curly braces, % signs. And the block, all Django tags also have a closing tag, just like HTML. This is a markup thing, and those oftentimes have closing tags. So we have to do end block as one word, also reserved word, and close that tag up. So this right here is telling us that this space right here is going to have our content. And this is how you set up a base.html template. And a way to get this to work, to tie it all together, is we go back to our index, and we have to make some changes here. So now we don't need all of this other stuff that we copied into the other page. So we get rid of everything except this H1 tag and just have this here for now. And to connect these, we're going to use a statement at the top called extends. So we're going to use the same Django tag to open up. So we're going to be doing this a lot in the next few weeks. Every time we do anything in the front end with Django, we're going to use the Django tag. So we open it up, curly bracket, percentage sign, and then the word extends, just plain text, extends. We have to tell it what template to extend. So base.html is the template that we have as a string. Don't forget to put this in as a string. I often forget to make that a string, and I often forget the closing tags. So curly bracket, percentage sign, extends, space, the string of the name of the template you use, base HTML. Again, base is very common to use, but we could call it anything. This is somewhat of a pattern that's common. And then we close the tag. All right, so now we have told this to use our base.html, which I should save before I go away from it again. And that's going to say that we could use all this stuff that's in here, right? So we have to now designate on the index what of this goes into where here. And we only have one block. We have the content block. So we want to put our content into a content block. And the way we do that is quite literally by putting that same block content tag, just like we did in the other one. But we're going to put it around whatever content we want to include here. End block. Save that. Now, spacing on this, unlike Python and things that we've done, the spacing does not matter on any of our markup languages. So it doesn't matter, this tabbing and spacing and things like that's not going to make a difference for HTML. The computer doesn't care. Any spacing you do in this is going to be for human readability. But this is all you need in our index. So we've extended the base template, and we've told it what content is specific to this page. All right, so we've saved this. We save that, and it should be that when we reload, I'll reload it from here so we don't have to go anywhere. We'll reload our server-side source code and update the page with the most recent changes that we've made. If we go here and refresh, there should be no changes because we just did a refactoring. So it still works exactly the same way. And as you see, I refreshed it. It didn't break. So we're happy. We're good. We refactored this successfully to include Django's template language so that we have this is the index. And to prove that it did actually do that, we can say, make a change here. Say, this is not the still index. It's still the index. Let's save that. Reload the server side. And refresh the browser. And there's the word still. So this is still the index. So we have it all hooked up so we can make our changes to our homepage here in the index.html and start developing the front end of our site next week. So this is the absolute target for today that I wanted to hit. If you are following along in the documentation, or if you look at the documentation, it has how to set up another page and follow that same pattern. If we have some time, we could do another. We could add the about page together if you'd like, and just kind of go through that real quickly. Again, it's the same patterns of write a view, map it in a URL, and then point it to a template. It's gonna be the exact same patterns over and over again. So we could leave that as a challenge for practice for you all to take from here and do on your own, or we could walk through it again as a demonstration. But I'm gonna pause there. You got any questions or any thoughts on this up to now? Anybody following along? I know this is a lot and it's pretty fast today, but
yeah, it went too fast to copy it down. I'll have to look at the documentation.
Okay. Any questions about how any of this was hooked up or about how any of these things worked?
Yeah, it's good to see the end result, and now as we do it, it's a little bit makes sense a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it is just a matter of practice, right? So that's the thing, is that these things, it seems, I know it seems really quick to do it all at the first time, but this pattern of writing a view and then mapping the URL and setting up the template, we're going to do that over and over again with pretty much everything we do. So when we do the create, the read, the update, and the delete operations, all those, we're going to first write a view for create, and then we're going to have to go and route the URL, and then we have to make a template for the create, and then we're going to have to do the same thing for the read, update, delete, and all that. Cool. All right. Any questions? Anybody got anything for us now? All right, great. So we can wrap it up there then if there are no questions. I can hang out a bit if anybody's stuck on something and you wanted to kind of go through it personally, and see where you're stuck. If you haven't caught up to this, if you want to get through it, we can keep working on it together. But if not, if no other questions, everyone's welcome to hop off. I can stop the recording here and post it up later. Like always, I'll post the directions for the steps that we took today to get to this point again. And I encourage everyone to go through it. We have a full week until our next class. Again, a reminder, no class on Thursday because it's the 4th. And we're going to take the holiday off. So our next class is going to be on Tuesday. And we're going to take from this point my site and the index that we have here and the about page. I'm going to add that as well. So I, again, encourage you all to go through that and practice doing that yourself and try to get this set up and the about page set up so that we have something to navigate between. Next week, we'll start setting up some page navigation and make this look a little bit more interesting and start doing some front end development.
Okay, I have one question here. Right?
Nope, no more questions. No, I'm joking. Yeah, what's up?
Sorry. Okay. Okay, I've been keeping up in the console. I've been typing in everything you said, right?
Sure.
It's like I did today, right? Like we did today.
Basically. Yeah, using Vim.
I had a lot of files and stuff that already, directories and whatever that already, I didn't need to recreate them, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I don't spend my time stumbling over myself.
Well, I mean, you probably will. That's the thing that I was trying to tell you earlier is that, this developing and writing code and stuff like that is a constant feeling of just stupidity, honestly. Like I feel stupid every single day that I'm doing this. And you just kind of practice to a point where you realize that you've gotten good at some things you've done a million times, but there's always something, like there's always something new.
I'm not worried about that part.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about, not being
what?
Not finishing basically.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, and that's the other thing is it's self-paced, right? So like take your time. If it's not clicking, keep trying. Let me know though. Reach out and we'll see about figuring out how it can make more sense. The idea with the documentation again is it should be something that you can kind of just plug in the right places if you're following along, and you don't have to write everything manually yourself. You do a lot of copying and pasting. There's no shame in doing that at all. And there should be complete files at the end of the documentation. So you should, I mean, even if you don't want to go through and do a piecemeal, you could do like the whole file and just copy the whole settings file over and the whole views file over and everything like that, and just make sure that you got the settings in the right places. And again, reach out if you get stuck. That goes for everybody. I have no problem finding some time between now and next class, between classes. Reach out on Discord, reach out on email, whatever you're comfortable with, and try these things out. Yeah, the best way to learn is to do it yourself.
Yeah. No.
All right. All right, cool. Well, if nothing else, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll stop the recording and I'll, hang out for a few minutes, but everybody's welcome to go. And I encourage you to practice them yourself. Yep. See you next time.